The axons in your brain typically help deliver sensations throughout your neurons. Those can include taste, touch, and emotions, like surprise. And we were surprised when Chinese manufacturer ZTE made a move this year that brought a competitive unlocked smartphone stateside. As Huawei is determined to seriously catch up in the US across 2016, we end 2015 with a look at what the ZTE Axon Pro did to shake up our conceptions of a budget-focused phone maker. Did it succeed in getting the company name out? I'm Jules Wong, you're on Pocketnow, and the answer's in our video review. The Axon design language is American-made. Specifically, Seattle-based design firm Teague helped to create the triangle tracks along the speaker grills and cameras. We'll get to those in just a bit. And giving the SIM slot and buttons all the right exposures and all the right treatments. To that effect, the volume up contact as well as the dedicated shutter trigger get the grid of triangles for a subtle refinement of style. Aero-class aluminum, colored phthalo blue on our unit, is bounded together with black polycarbonate end caps for a more balanced, less slippery feel in hand. A special antimicrobial pane of Gorilla Glass 3 stands up from the body, pulling out of its top and bottom edges. It houses the capacitive keys, which are reassignable but must be used, and a sharp-made Quad HD LCD spanning across 5.5 inches. The greens get a little more favor in the gamut, but it's otherwise a pretty accurate display that can keep very dark or glow like the sun. Silicon comes in the form of a Snapdragon 810 processor. There's 4GB of RAM and non-expandable storage, options of 32 or 64GB. For a phone that prides itself on high-fidelity audio, there's only one front-facing speaker on this device, so ZTE got this one half correct. There are also two special DAC chips that enable 32-bit playback, and just for giggles, we have the JBL E13 earbuds included with early bird orders. All that soundware gets a heaping dose of Dolby Digital sound tuning with different preset configs and manual EQs to bump up the bass or pick up more throaty tones. There's a reason why Dolby's been around for a long time, and we're glad to hear so many ingredients put together for a relatively affordable but nice in-ear listening experience. Elsewhere on Android 5.1.1, ZTE takes a more aggressive approach to skinning the OS compared to other OEMs without going overboard though. That includes a couple of themes, but no theme store. There are bloat apps, including 2 fitness apps, but there are only 5 of them total, and you can disable them right from the app drawer. The rather lacking Z-Space info page takes over the Google Now nav swipe shortcut, but that can also be shut down. And there's no option to see your battery percentage, which means you'll have to get a third-party app for that. The Axon Pro includes a task manager so you can track how it handles CPU and RAM, and disappointingly, it does so rather poorly. Details after we take a look at the pictures this thing takes. Speaking of, just tap the dedicated shutter button twice anytime you want, and you're in the viewfinder. If this weren't ZTE and instead HTC, we'd be talking about a dual camera setup. But instead we'll settle for saying that a 2-megapixel focus assist sensor is paired with a 13-megapixel camera on back. Aperture's wide, autofocus is fast, and you can get shutter speed down to 1/90,000th of a second. The front-sider's got 8 megapixels on it. When testing out the somewhat confusing bokeh mode, where you can adjust the focus after the fact, well, it works just as mediocrely as on the HTC One M8. After Effects seem to choke on blurring out the close-in subjects sometimes too. Other than that, we have a pretty meh shooter overall. There's no stabilization, and even with phase detection, the autofocus just doesn't want to behave sometimes. You might have a tough go at it in the dark, or even in the dim, and during the day, you'll find negotiating with the sun or sky to be a tough proposition occasionally. The phone does favor blowing highlights out just a little bit. Video spools up to 4K. It does a decent job as far as we can tell. Stepping back a bit, you can definitely grab some decent snaps from this camera, just don't expect much more from it. We had a hard time taking calls with our Axon Pro unit. You'll have to hunt for the earpiece once in a while since it's offset to the right. Noise cancellation was either too aggressive or just not working at all. One of our test callers reported that he couldn't hear us for a 20-second stretch of time. Using the phone as a phone was challenging, to say the least. T-Mobile speeds around Greater Boston have been average. Gaming performance with the 810 has been smooth and warm, but not hot. While multitasking has generally been a smooth experience, RAM prioritization issues occasionally strike up. You should be able to listen to a podcast while scrolling social media or some web pages, but at some point, the podcast app just gives up the ghost. This isn't what a phone with 4GB of RAM should do. For a non-removable 3000 mAh battery on a heavy streaming media diet, the screen was lit for 3 to 3.5 hours over an 8-hour day on average. ZTE's fuller investment in the US market has taken a lesser position as the Axon brand has been replastered for use in, yes, China. And we really don't know what to expect from Axon around these parts in the near future. So, given how Huawei's so ready to put up a fight in the US with facilities and a CES launch, it's going to be critical for ZTE to take step 2 with some contemplation. How the next phone will look, feel, run, and most importantly, spread. Despite rhetoric to the contrary, for ZTE to change the smartphone game in the US, it'll either need network carriage or an irresistible product. So, how does step 1 set this all up? Well, the Axon Pro hasn't exactly wowed us with its price tag. The software-hardware combination, while potent and pleasantly plain, might prove to be a problematic, long-standing drain. And while there has been a software update to address a major complaint about the cameras, we're still left wondering where the commitment is to Marshmallow. That is part of the Axon Passport promise ZTE made to customers. And it's a good promise too. The company just needs to follow up on it. And after all this talk about security holes and RAM management fixes, we're in doubt as to whether we can recommend buying this phone to you. And when you put it next to the Moto X or the OnePlus 2, well, you might be happier paying less. If the company wants better traction for the Axon, 2016 better be a better year for ZTE in the USA. And that actually means paying better attention to all of the competition. We hope to get to you more coverage of ZTE at CES this year in Las Vegas, so follow us on Pocketnow at pocketnow.com and everywhere we are social at. And for all of the Pocketnow team, I'm Jules Wong at PointJules on Twitter. More from us later.